Awesome. So welcome everybody. We're getting ready for the next panel. Just as a reminder for everyone, if you're on the socials, the hashtag is ETHDenver 2025. And so without further ado, let's introduce the next panel. It's called The Human Algorithm Building the Soul of Crypto. And our moderator is Tomer from the Stellar Development Foundation. So,
thank you so much. Welcome everyone to the best panel in the history of ETHDenver in all times.
Woo!
Okay, so we have a bit of an interesting topic today. As you've probably noticed, it's been a difficult few weeks for crypto. $1.5 billion lost last week in the Bybit hack. It's a bloodbath out there in the markets. Meme coins going all the way to the top have been rugged. Difficult times, but I think this is a good opportunity to kind of like center ourselves back and kind of like remind ourselves what it is that we're actually doing. Talk about the actual soul of crypto, what we're here to do, and how we're delivering prosperity to people through blockchain. So maybe we can start with a quick intro. Tell us who you are, what you're working on, and how you think, in a few sentences, how that's delivering prosperity.
Sure. Hey, everyone. So my name is Kolszewski. I'm one of the co-founders of Celo. And Celo's mission is actually one of prosperity for all. And we've been working on it now for 6 years. It's an EVM-compatible L1 that's transitioning to an L2. And we're really focused on real-world use cases in emerging markets. And so we have a lot of really great partners and builders who have built some incredible apps. I'll talk about them later. I'll just keep this short. But the end result is that we see people who are actually using crypto the way that you and I might be using typical financial applications in the West. But they're doing it all self-custodial on-chain. And it's not for DeFi, not for speculating on meme coins, but actually for their day-to-day transactions. And so, yeah, it's really exciting.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nanak. I'm one of the co-founders of Koladen. So Koladen builds Human.tech, which is like technology for humanistic flourishing, making tech that serves people rather than the other way around. And we feel that cryptography is a really good way of enforcing digital rights because there are lots of places where there are not the same rights as in the West. You don't have right to financial infrastructure. You might not have a government ID even. So how are you going to do basic things? And even if you do have access to finance, there's censorship over where you can use your money. So building cryptographic primitives for enforcing digital rights is what we do. And we see a lot of use cases for this, especially when you don't really have a banking system or identity.
Hi, I'm Lucy Koladen. I work with Polkadot, which is the world's largest DAO, founded by Dr. Gavin Wood, who was the co-founder of Ethereum, which has brought us all here today. I started off at Polkadot at Parity, which is the sort of engine room of Polkadot, and then we went through a full period of decentralization, and I became a solo agent, and which has led me to spearhead the Polkadot Ambassador Fellowship, which is a community, creating a community hub within Polkadot and within Web3 to a greater extent. So it will be the goal is to become the largest on-chain decentralized community in the world, and to be able to scale and be resilient to up to potentially hundreds of thousands of people, but find a way to really keep that sense of community and belonging through the good times, through the bad times, which is, I think, exactly what we're talking about here today.
Awesome. Sounds great. And by the way, I'm Tomer, Chief Product Officer at the Stellar Development Foundation, a blockchain that's been around since 2015, really focused on real-world impact. And Marek, I know we've been coming in the same circles for a while now. You've been working on this for a while. Like you said, prosperity is literally in the mission statement. Can you start off by giving us some examples of how adoption is actually increasing prosperity?
Yeah. So I think in our case, we've partnered with Opera, this browser company. Are you guys familiar with Opera? Anybody use Opera, the browser? Cool. So, as you know, they're a pretty big publicly listed company with about 500 million monthly active users across all of their products. And we've been working with them now for a couple of years to launch a fully self-custodial P2P payments wallet that is only focused on stablecoins. And so they deployed this about a year ago, and they've onboarded about 6 million users directly into their wallet. These folks are primarily in emerging markets, and they're using MiniPay the way you and I use Venmo, for example, here in the US. You can only custody right now US dollar stablecoins. And so some people are using it to save, and so it's a really useful way to hedge inflation in a lot of markets. Some people are using it, again, for P2P payments. Other people are using it for remittances to receive money from overseas. And so a lot of these real-world use cases that, again, are really bringing prosperity to people who previously, maybe didn't have the same financial infrastructure that many of us here take for granted. So this is one, I think, example. And it's very big. Again, they've onboarded quite a lot of users. There's about 600,000 daily active users. And so that's a very large amount of people who are transacting day to day, certainly by Web3 numbers. And it's growing very, very quickly. And I think with this kind of base wallet and other similar wallets like Valora, suddenly we have kind of the foundation upon which other dApps can deploy. And so there's a bunch of lending markets that are doing uncollateralized lending. Haraka is a really good example of this. They're live in Kenya and in Ghana. There's a lot of really interesting experimentation happening where, again, these stablecoins are being used for these use cases that mirror traditional financial use cases, but are happening fully on self-custodial wallets with stablecoins in those markets. There's two more that I think are worth sharing that are pretty cool. There's also a lot of ReFi activity happening on Celo, and so there's this really cool mix of ReFi and financial inclusion, one of which is Sylvie. Sylvie is created a tree planting protocol where they're incentivizing folks to actually plant trees throughout different deforested areas. And so people are then paid in stablecoins in these local communities. And so it's a source of income for many people, but it's also a source of rehabilitation for some of these deforested spaces. And then in a similar vein, there's a X Prize winning project called Gain Forest that's incentivizing people with stablecoins to record the biodiversity of their rainforests in local communities in rainforest regions throughout the world. So they have a big program in the Philippines and a few others around the world, in Brazil as well. And it's just so incredible to see people actually using self-custodial wallets, using stable coins to incentivize behavior that is furthering some really cool environmental cause, and then also creating these mini economies in these communities. You know, once this capital is injected into these communities, people are then not necessarily cashing out immediately, but actually realizing, oh, this is actually kind of convenient. I can pay for things electronically. Let me just keep this money here, and then the money starts circulating in these communities. And so I think that's probably the most exciting thing that's happening between kind of all of these projects coming together.
Very cool. Lucy, given your track record with the Polkadot ecosystem, can you share any examples that you've seen throughout your years in Polkadot?
So I would say, our open governance system is probably the key thing that comes to mind in terms of bringing prosperity. And it's also something that is fully active. It's not just a concept. So every single dot holder has a vote on every proposal that comes through to the treasury. So the future of Polkadot, what we spend our money on, what sort of direction we move in, is genuinely down to every single person within the dot community. We have become, it's hard to argue that we're not sort of probably the most decentralized protocol out there with I think we have a Nakamoto coefficient of 149, and we have a treasury of over $200 million, including stable coins, which members of the community have access to. You put a proposal, it's voted by all the dot holders, and then it passes. It's no doubt that it's been and continues to be, a bit of a struggle. Expect chaos is the mantra that Polkadot was built on, but I think we're really starting to see increased participation, and it's something for me as a non-technical person, which is I think what the community up until recently within Web3 has been very technically based, but there is space for people that aren't, and we need to bring those people in. And I think the governance system and the sort of the educational piece around that, and people being able to get involved, and lots of different types of proposals that are coming through, marketing, BD, investor-related stuff, events. There's sort of something for everybody, and I think that's a real win for us, and something that can scale beyond the Web3 world as well. I mean, it's a governance system that could be used all around the globe to bring a sort of a more free and equal society. Awesome.
And Nanak, given privacy and identity is something that is often overlooked in this, and I think especially when it comes to governance, when it comes to real-world impact, things like proof of personhood become very important. Can you tell us a bit about your work in that space and how you see that affect prosperity?
Yeah, so there's always a trade-off, right, of how secure you can be and how, well, in a sense there's a trade-off between how secure you can be and how private you can be. Because most secure, you know who everybody is, they verify themselves, you can't have bad actors, but we're in a decentralized world, we have a situation where everybody's anonymous online. So is there a way to keep those values of being private while preserving the security that identity verification brings ecosystems? And I think this is where ZK is really important in protecting the right to privacy as systems become more and more incentivized to collect this data on people. So yeah, I mean, Sybil attacks are a huge problem in governance. And so every governance protocol, I'm sure you probably had to deal with Sybil attacks many times, right? Like once there's any money on the line, you get the most ridiculous things. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have stories too. Yes, we've definitely seen. I
think we had an only dot proposal and things like that. Starting OnlyFans on Polkadot, things like that. Yeah, all comes through.
Yep. And you have people who is like, okay, well, maybe I can buy somebody's ID for $5, and you have people who will just like, in some country, they'll just like ride their motorcycle, find a group of people, be like, hey, I'll give you $5 if you scan your ID and give me your face, and so you have all these challenges. And I think the other places where privacy is important are where there are no, where you can't trust the data custodians. For example, like we're somewhat lucky in the US and in most of the Western world where there's a lot of regulation about what can be done with data, and even then it's still a messed up situation. But like oftentimes, like, you don't want the government to know that. Like, government itself should not be holding the IDs, because sometimes the government itself can come after you for doing, seemingly normal things. So there, if you look at countries like Iran, Myanmar, privacy is like super important there when your rights are restricted.
Marek, I heard a rumor that maybe you also have something to share in the space of identity. Your shirt is a clue.
Yes, maybe I'll take this off so you guys can see. No, we're really excited. So this week we announced Self, which we actually also launched late last night. So Self.xyz. It is a ZK Passport protocol. If you guys are familiar with ZK Passport, maybe some of you have seen the demo over at DEF CON. There were a few demos going around. But if you're not familiar with it, it's pretty cool. Passports nowadays have NFC chips in them. You've maybe seen these biometric passport logos on the front cover of your passport. Inside the NFC chip is all of your biometric passport information, and it's cryptographically signed with a certificate authority chain that goes up to your issuing country. And so you can actually cryptographically verify the authenticity of your passport And because we're living in a world of smart contracts, you can actually verify that authenticity on chain without a counterparty. And so that's pretty exciting. The only downside with doing that is you would be revealing your passport information to verify those signatures. And so Self actually does that verification in ZK, so in zero knowledge. And so you can use the Self app, which again you can find on Self.xyz, to effectively scan your passport and then construct one of these ZK proofs that proves that you're in possession of a valid passport. And so why is that interesting? It's interesting because you can, one, prove that you are a unique individual. So it's much harder to Sybil attack those governance protocols, but it's also harder to Sybil attack airdrops or any incentive mechanism that someone might create. You can also prove that you are not on the OFAC list. As you mentioned, we had this very unfortunate reminder last Friday that there are a lot of bad actors in our industry. And a lot of decentralized smart contract-based applications are the ones that are struggling with this the most. And now you can actually gatekeep those applications with a proof that someone isn't on the OFAC list. And so that's pretty exciting. You can also prove that you're a human in general. Who would have thought we have to worry about that? But now with AI agents, suddenly this is becoming a problem. And so anything that is basically on your front page of your passport, you can create a zero-knowledge proof that reveals or makes a statement about that information. And you can do that in zero knowledge. And so certainly the OFAC, proving that you're not on the OFAC list is probably the most complex example of this, where you're not revealing anything about yourself, not your name, not your country, not your date of birth. But you can also optionally reveal small pieces of information. So for example, if someone wanted to create a Bob coin, they could, and they could reward people named Bob for their name. You could reward people for on their birthdays if you want. And so there's a lot of fun little applications that folks can build. And so we're really excited to see where this goes. But primarily we built this because, on the topic of prosperity, one of the things that we've done really well as an industry is create incentives that incentivize people who have a lot of capital and can go and bootstrap a lot of these Web3 protocols with capital. And that's been working well ever since the DeFi summer. We've seen a lot of really good examples of yield farming, really bootstrapping network effects. But how do we incentivize people who maybe don't have a lot of capital to bring to a particular protocol? How do we incentivize them to come on chain and use these Web3 applications? This has been a real struggle for us, I would say, as an industry for a long time. And Sybil resistance is basically the solution to this problem. And so that's why we're so excited about Self, because you can effectively prove that, again, you are a unique individual. It's very hard to Sybil protocols that are using Self. And the end result is you can create these incentive schemes that can incentivize payment networks to grow, or uncollateralized lending markets to grow, commerce, things that, again, don't relate to speculation, but revolve more around real-world use cases that solve real problems for people.
That's awesome. And even though I'm a moderator, just sharing some examples that we see in the Stellar ecosystem, talking about these real-world use cases, we're seeing refugees in Ukraine getting paid with stablecoins and able to turn them into cash through MoneyGram, for example. We've seen remote villages in Colombia being able to get paid for gig work from the US and then turn that into cash in their own communities. And we see this on-chain effect. We actually put out a video earlier this year with a wallet in the ecosystem called Decaf that actually is a mini documentary that shows you how a specific village gets transformed once they get access to these financial instruments. So we talked a bit about the identity challenges. We talked about the governance challenges. What other challenges do you see in the road for adoption that actually leads to prosperity? Lucy, maybe we can start with you.
Yes, so I think in my view, as I kind of touched on earlier, I think it's bringing the Web3 world to the wider community. It still feels very siloed, and so I think the onboarding the onboarding process, not just to each protocol, but to Web3 in general, is incredibly important. It's important that we work very siloed, and I think actually it's a really good example of you're working on something to do with identity. You've just released something on identity. Gavin and Polkadot are working on proof of personhood with tattoos. You know, everybody having a tattoo of a Kusama bird with a code underneath it. So we're all working on the same thing, and obviously we need competition. We need to, but if we came together more, it feels very much still like there's many pieces of a puzzle on the table, and we're still not kind of coming together. And I think that's what's really necessary for us to go beyond kind of just us here at ETHDenver, you know, kind of, which is great. We're a great community. It's the same sort of people, but, you know, and I won't go down the, you know, your mum needs to understand it route, but the younger generations coming up, like, you know, onboarding people, this isn't going away now, I guess, you know, and I think we need to be more unified. Somebody said to me that the rising tide rises all boats. And so that's what I think we need to do, and that's what we're trying to do with the Polkadot Ambassador Fellowship. We have the Polkadot Technical Fellowship headed up by Gavin and some of the very senior engineers. And then this is the community, kind of the human side. So we're open to everybody, and we look to take each individual through their Web3 journey, through different ranks, with different educational tools, mentorship, and as the until recently CEO of the Web3 Foundation said in the summer last week, Polkadot's been siloed for too long, and it's time that we make friends. And I think that's really the key to pushing the prosperity forward for the many, not just the few.
I think one other challenge in adoption of this tech is on and off ramps. Like, number one challenge, hands down, on off ramps, because it's just the fees are too high and the KYC is too much. And, you know, so there are essentially two options. One is somehow figure out a way in our regulatory landscape to get on and off ramps with like higher fees, lower fees, and you know, less barriers, less user friction to actually using it. Because otherwise, none of the value props of crypto make sense. Like, we have all the value props, people are using it. Like, you guys, like, you have so many people in Africa and other countries, like, actually using this stuff, and a lot of that is because, I don't know the details on off ramps there, but like, you know, you don't need to on off ramp as much either if you're mostly holding it to hedge against inflation or if you're doing stablecoin payments. So yeah, you could fix the on and off ramps. You can get better like physical off ramps where you can actually pay for real tangible things in crypto, and in South America people are starting to do that. And the other is also figuring out a way to build on and off ramps that are permissionless, that, you know, don't have all these hurdles.
Mark, in a quick sentence, because they're throwing us off stage.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I agree with that. I mean, for me, it's really three things: on and off ramps. We've been investing heavily in on and off ramps for the last 4 years, and I think it's made it easier, but there's still a lot of work to be done. One example of what we've done, which is really cool, with an ecosystem partner, is being able to off ramp directly into M-Pesa in Kenya. And so if you use MiniPay in Kenya, you can actually pay anywhere where M-Pesa is available. And so whenever we travel to conferences there, it's such a delight, because previously you'd have to buy a local SIM and actually top it up with M-Pesa. You'd have to bring your passport. And here you actually don't even need to do KYC. You just bring your self-custodial wallet and get going. And so I think on and off ramping is still a big unsolved problem. We're chipping away, but it's getting better and better. The other one is just UX, right? I think if we really want to do something that's easy for normies, it has to be much easier than a lot of what exists today in crypto. And you know, that's why we've focused relentlessly on this for the last actually 6 years even. And so on Celo, you can pay for gas with tokens, which is really quite lovely. And so that experience that I mentioned by Opera doesn't require you to have Celo, doesn't require you to have ETH. Everything is paid for natively with USDC or USDT, and that just makes the experience much easier. And there's just a lot of additional things that just need to be done, I think, in the whole stack to make crypto easier for everyone. And then finally, I think probably the biggest thing is distribution. I think most developers build these products that are focused more on kind of these speculative use cases, because those are the people who are on crypto today. And so if you want to have actual users, you're kind of forced to go into that, that direction. But luckily now with folks like Opera coming into crypto, these big companies with these really large numbers of users, right, 500 million monthly active users across all their products, suddenly these are the kind of companies that can bring developers distribution. And so, yeah, if you're a builder and you're thinking about, okay, I want to do something for the real world, and I want to have lots of users, then I would definitely check out MiniPay.
Thank you. Our time is up. If you have any questions, come meet us outdoor. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.